First at 6, Fox 12 has uncovered new evidence in the Oregon foster care crisis that shows DHS is continuing to house foster kids in hotels across the state at an alarming rate. This despite a lawsuit filed condemning the practice last year. Fox 12's Caitlin Bolduc is live outside of DHS headquarters in Salem with more on a story you'll see only on 12. Caitlin?
Well, DHS claims the practice of placing foster kids in a hotel room overnight under the supervision of caseworkers is something that happens only during an emergency when there's nowhere else for those kids to go. But newly filed court documents paint a much different story and allege that not only is this happening on a daily basis, but in some cases, kids are staying in a hotel for months. Outside of a hotel near the Lloyd Center Monday night, Fox 12 was there as state car after state car rolled into the parking lot. A source within DHS says this is the hotel where many Multnomah County foster kids spend their nights. Our cameras were rolling as a man and a teenage girl exited a car that's assigned to the DHS Child and Youth Division. Both later walked into the hotel, bags in hand. Over the course of just 3 hours, we saw a total of 7 cars assigned to that Portland DHS division parked outside of the hotel, though it appears this is just a snapshot of what's happening across the state. These documents were filed in district court today in connection with a lawsuit filed against DHS last year about the practice of hoteling kids. They show not only is DHS continuing to house kids in hotels on a daily basis, but the practice appears to be growing at an alarming rate. The documents cite official Department of Justice data that track the placement of foster kids in hotels and DHS offices over the past 7 months. The data shows more than 130 kids have stayed in a hotel for some period of time, and over half of those kids were said to be 12 years old or younger. One 9-year-old reportedly stayed in a hotel for 81 days. One 17-year-old stayed in a hotel for 85 days. According to that data, half of the kids staying in hotels were from Multnomah County, but the practice is happening in virtually every county across Oregon. Other court documents filed today allege many of those kids are fed fast food for all 3 meals, resulting in weight gain. And some unplaced kids go completely unsupervised and use illicit drugs during the day.
I have to be careful about talking about that issue because we do have some litigation involving that, but it's one of our top priorities, and I will tell you it's an issue, you know, as far as looking for solutions and awareness, we talk about it on a daily basis. So it's one of our top priorities and on the very top of the list of issues we're trying to deal with every day.
That was DHS Director Clyde Psyche last October in an interview with Fox 12 addressing the practice of hoteling foster kids. We went to Salem today hoping to talk with Psyche again.
The story is going to upset so many viewers, and I just want to make sure that we get some sort of response.
But we're repeatedly told he or anyone with DHS would not comment because of the pending court case. And the governor's office also declined to comment on this story. Reporting live in Salem tonight, Caitlin Bolduc, Fox 12 Oregon.
First at 6, we are getting an inside perspective on the practice of hoteling foster kids from a retired DHS caseworker herself.
It's a story she's sharing after the Fox 12 investigators exposed the state agency is continuing to house children in hotels for weeks, even months, despite a lawsuit calling on them to stop. Fox 12's Caitlin Bolduc joins us now with an interview you'll see only on 12.
Well, Pete and Nora, good evening. Barbara Casey worked as a caseworker for 15 years, and during that time, she says placing a child in a hotel overnight was a rarity. She now considers what's going on to be a crisis. She's agreed to talk with us tonight to shine a light on the problem and encourage members of the community to step up. When Barbara Casey retired from the Department of Human Services back in February of 2014, she thought her work as a caseworker was done, though she kept in touch with friends at the agency who in turn kept her keyed into the rising challenges they faced in placing kids in a foster home.
I literally got a call from a woman who was in the process of trying to put at least a program in place of how can we manage the unmanageable.
Casey says she was asked to come back on a temporary basis last October to help watch over kids forced to stay overnight in hotels, and she did so for several months. Casey says the agency always paired up 2 caseworkers to supervise 1 foster child, and they typically stayed in a hotel suite with their own spaces. They'd usually roll into the hotel around 5 and work a 15-hour shift through the night. Not a problem for the retiree, though she sympathized with the caseworker who came straight from work and went back to work the next morning.
And my heart went out to them, and I'd say, can you catch an hour here of sleep, or can you rest? And they're showering, they're getting their case notes ready for the next day's court date, or the next family visit they have to do, or the next panel they have to sit on, looking for homes.
Court documents obtained by Fox 12 in connection with a lawsuit filed against DHS reveals some 130 foster children in Oregon spent the night in a hotel or DHS office in the past 7 months.
I've not seen the crisis as strong as it is now, and it is a crisis.
Casey says while hoteling kids is unnatural and at times unhealthy, it wasn't all bad. She considers the hotel a safe space and one many caseworkers strive to make fun.
This is a stopgap measure, not a particularly good one, and probably a rather expensive one. But that's why the need for foster families are so great.
Beyond the need for more foster parents, Casey argues the agency needs more funding to retain those foster parents, boost reimbursement rates, and build better programs.
Do you patch up the wall, or do you get a re-roof? You know, do you do a patch here? And these are the things that you do when you're in, frankly, a little bit of a crisis mode, that you have to spend the money now because you don't have the bigger budget that you need to do a sustainable, ongoing recruitment. So you do this situation. I don't think anybody wants that situation to continue, but it's where we find ourselves.
Well, the union that represents DHS caseworkers issued this statement to Fox 12 tonight, which reads in part, quote, "It's clear that current funding levels are woefully inadequate. Oregon needs game-changing systemic investments in child welfare services in order to improve outcomes for our state's most vulnerable children." A decision on the state budget that is slated to impact DHS is expected to come sometime in these next 2 weeks. Reporting live in studio, Caitlin Bolduc, Fox 12 Oregon.
The Fox 12 investigators have uncovered the cost of placing Oregon's foster kids in hotel rooms, and it's adding up into the millions of dollars. DHS is placing kids in hotels on a regular basis, despite a lawsuit filed against the practice last year. And in 7 months, it appears the state agency spent nearly $2 million in doing so. Fox 12's Caitlin Bolduc explains why the state is spending so much money on this often criticized practice.
DHS could not provide us a running tally of what it was spending on placing foster kids in hotels, so we requested a copy of their financial records. They claimed those records would cost us thousands of dollars, so instead we requested their expenditures for one child from one night and did the math ourselves. It's a Band-Aid solution to the foster care crisis, and the state is bleeding money trying to keep up. Oregon's most vulnerable children placed in hotels when there's nowhere else for them to go. Caseworkers wind up working through the night just to watch over them. After filing a public records request, DHS provided Fox 12 with this snapshot of what the state agency says it spent on a random hotel stay dated July 8th, 2017. You can see the hotel room itself was $169. That's for one child and 2 caseworkers. The group gets a per diem for dinner and money for one activity. Then the state shells out overtime and shift differential pay to both caseworkers. It's important to note each caseworker is paid on a sliding scale, and DHS says this salary is considered mid-range. Based on this receipt, it appears the state spent $1,348.40 for housing one foster kid in one hotel for one night. Next, we took that dollar figure and multiplied it by the number of nights 130 foster kids stayed in Oregon hotels over 7 months. Numbers we compiled after sifting through this Department of Justice data. We estimated that in a half year's time, the state spent just under $2 million from its Child Welfare General Fund on housing foster kids in hotels, a figure that shows how costly the placement crisis really is.
Well, it's a lot of money, but that's the kind of cost when you're doing crisis response.
In direct response to the urgent need for more foster beds, Sean Suib with New Avenues for Youth and Andrew Grover with Youth Villages combined resources over the summer to be a part of the solution.
In Oregon right now today, there's roughly 8,000 children in foster care. And if you do all the math, you'll see that that's about 9 out of every 1,000 kids. Nationally, the average is 5 out of every 1,000.
Both are now partnering with DHS to provide short-term temporary housing for foster youth ages 9 to 20. This 12-bed facility in Clackamas, called Robbinswood, will provide 24-hour intensive care and support services for foster youth when up and running.
Our Intercept team will work side by side with the Robbinswood team from the very first few days that a child enters that program to determine, do they need transitional support so that when they leave Robbinswood, how are they going to get to the right place for this child?
Boys and Girls Aid is also now stepping up to fill the need for Oregon's youngest kids in foster care.
Well, I think like a lot of other Portlanders, our agency was alarmed to hear that this was happening. We believe in permanency for children, and what signifies a lack of that more than a child having to sleep in a hotel room.
The nonprofit is working with DHS to provide this home in East Portland as an emergency shelter for kids ages 8 and under. They've recruited 2 foster parents to live there full-time, rent-free, and will pay them a monthly retainer for providing care. The organization is also working to establish 2 other support homes to offer additional care for foster kids. Each will have the ability to take in up to 3 children.
This is an innovative approach to foster care.
Between the partnerships with DHS and these nonprofits, more than 20 beds will soon be available for unplaced youth. It's considered a critical step toward eradicating the state's multi-million-dollar practice of placing Oregon's foster children in hotels.
There are a whole host of things that go into the need for a child welfare system. And those things weren't created by DHS. They're part of the reality of the community that we live in.
After checking with the agency's budget department, a DHS spokesperson confirmed that $2 million figure is a reasonable rough estimate of what the agency has paid for placing kids in hotels. In response to this story, DHS issued this statement to Fox 12, which says in part, quote, "We believe that in total, the 27 beds coming online this fall, including Robbinswood and partnerships with Boys and Girls Aid and Maple Star, will greatly and probably permanently abate the need to use hotels for youth in foster care." Reporting in studio, Caitlin Bolduck, Fox 12 Oregon.